Christmas morning at my parents' house in suburban Denver turned into the moment that shattered my entire world. I watched my 25-year-old sister Madison unwrap a brand new BMW with a perfect red bow sitting in our driveway, while I held a cheap plastic piggy bank containing exactly $2 bills. My parents beamed with pure pride as Madison squealed with delight, hugging them like they had just handed her the universe itself. I felt completely invisible, humiliated beyond words. At 2 in the morning, I quietly packed my belongings, drove away in my beat up Honda, and blocked their numbers. The next morning brought a furious voicemail from Dad threatening to report the BMW stolen because apparently it was registered in my name. I sat in my cramped studio apartment, staring at that ridiculous piggy bank on my kitchen counter, feeling like my heart had been ripped from my chest and stomped into pieces. 28 years old, and I finally understood exactly where I stood in my family hierarchy. Absolutely nowhere. Growing up, I had always been the responsible one. While Madison spent her teenage years sneaking out, failing classes, and getting into trouble, I worked after school at the local grocery store to save money for college. I graduated high school with honors, put myself through state university with a combination of scholarships, student loans, and working 2 jobs simultaneously. I studied business administration, maintained a 3.8 grade point average, and landed a decent job as a financial coordinator at a mid-sized insurance company right after graduation. Madison, on the other hand, dropped out of community college after 1 semester, moved back into our childhood bedroom, and started working part-time at an upscale boutique in downtown Denver. She spent her days selling overpriced clothes to wealthy women and her evenings going out with friends, always asking our parents for money to cover her expenses. Every family dinner involved Madison complaining about being broke while I sat quietly, knowing that my parents would inevitably slide her a few $100s before she left. The favoritism had always been obvious, but I told myself it was because Madison needed more help. I was independent, successful, responsible. I did not need my parents' financial support because I had built a stable life for myself. I drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic that I had bought used and maintained meticulously. I lived in a modest apartment, cooked my own meals, and managed my finances carefully. I had an emergency fund, excellent credit, and a growing retirement account. I was proud of myself, sufficiency, but Christmas morning had revealed something far more sinister than simple favoritism. Watching Madison receive a $60,000 luxury vehicle, while I got what amounted to pocket change, felt like a deliberate humiliation. The way my parents had presented the gifts made it clear this was not about need or fairness. This was about love, and apparently, they had plenty for Madison and none left for me. I had driven home in complete shock, barely able to process what had happened. I packed my belongings mechanically, throwing clothes into suitcases while tears streamed down my face. I left quietly because I could not bear the thought of another conversation where my parents would dismiss my feelings or make excuses for the blatant inequality. But then came Dad's voicemail, and everything changed completely. His voice was cold, angry, demanding. He did not ask how I was feeling or whether we could talk about what happened. He simply threatened me, claiming that if I did not return their car immediately, they would report it stolen and have me arrested. He spoke about the BMW like it belonged to them, like Madison had every right to it. But he also said something that made my blood run cold. The car was registered in my name. That made no sense whatsoever. I had not signed any paperwork. I had not visited any car dealership. I had not applied for any auto loans. Why would a car I had never seen before be registered to me? With shaking hands, I called the BMW dealership first thing Monday morning. BMW of Denver, this is Janet speaking. How can I help you? Hi, I need to ask about a vehicle that was apparently purchased under my name. A new BMW that was delivered yesterday. Of course. Let me pull up that account. What's your name? Isabelle Thompson. I heard typing, then a pause. Oh yes, here it is. Beautiful car. Your parents seemed so excited to be buying it for you. They said it was a Christmas surprise. The financing went through perfectly with your excellent credit score. Is there a problem with the vehicle? My stomach dropped to my feet. I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? My parents bought this car using my name and credit. Well, yes. They explained that they wanted to surprise their daughter Isabelle, and since you have such excellent credit, They thought it would be better to finance it under your name to get the best interest rate. They showed us your identification and social security information. Your mother said you had given them permission to handle the paperwork as part of the Christmas surprise. They arranged for Madison to be listed as the primary driver since they said you already had a reliable vehicle. The room started spinning around me. You're telling me they used my social security number and credit information to purchase this car without me being physically present? Well, that's not unusual for family purchases, especially when it's a gift. They had all your information, and your credit application was approved instantly. Is there some kind of problem? I hung up the phone and immediately ran to my computer to check my credit report. What I found destroyed any remaining illusion I had about my family. The BMW loan was there, all right. $63,000 financed over 6 years under my name, my social security number, my credit history. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was realizing this was not the first time. I spent the entire day diving deeper into my credit report and financial records, and with each new discovery, I felt sicker to my stomach. The BMW was not an isolated incident. It was part of a systematic pattern of financial fraud that had been going on for over 2 years. 3 credit cards I had never applied for, each with balances ranging from $5,000 to $12,000. A personal loan for $15,000 taken out 18 months ago. Even Madison's apartment lease had been signed using my information and credit history. Every single fraudulent account showed the same pattern. Applications submitted online using my personal information, with statements and correspondence being sent to my parents' address instead of mine. I called my bank and requested copies of all my statements going back 3 years. What I discovered made me physically ill. My mother had been systematically intercepting my mail. She had convinced me to keep my permanent address listed as their house for important documents and tax purposes, claiming it was more secure than my apartment complex's mailboxes. I had been naive enough to trust her. For 2 years, my mother had been collecting every credit card statement, loan notification, and financial document that arrived at their house. She had been opening accounts in my name, using them to fund Madison's lifestyle, then hiding all evidence of the fraud. When I visited for family dinners or holidays, she would casually mention that some mail had arrived for me, but she always said it was just junk or that she had forgotten to grab it from the pile. The personal loan records showed the most damning evidence. The $15,000 had been deposited directly into an account jointly held by my parents and Madison. Bank records showed systematic withdrawals that corresponded perfectly with Madison's rent payments, car insurance, credit card payments, and shopping sprees. They had been using my excellent credit score and responsible financial history as their personal ATM for Madison's irresponsible spending habits. I called the credit card companies one by one, and each conversation revealed more horrifying details. The applications had been submitted using my social security number, birth date, and employment information, but with my parents' address and phone number for contact. When the companies had called to verify information, my mother had answered the phone, claimed to be me, and provided all the necessary verification details to activate the accounts. Altogether, the fraudulent debt placed in my name totaled over $90,000. My parents had systematically destroyed my financial future to prop up Madison's completely unsustainable lifestyle. Every single thing she owned, from her designer clothes to her upscale apartment to her brand new BMW, had been purchased using credit stolen from me. The most heartbreaking realization was understanding how carefully they had planned this betrayal. This was not a moment of desperation or a single bad decision. This was a calculated, long-term scheme that required coordination, planning, and deliberate deception. My parents had looked at their 2 daughters and decided that one deserved everything, while the other deserved to be financially destroyed to make it possible. Every time I had visited them over the past 2 years, they had been smiling to my face while actively stealing from me behind my back. Every family dinner where they praised my responsibility and financial success, they were secretly using that success to fund their other daughter's irresponsibility. Every time I had proudly mentioned my excellent credit score or my growing savings account, I was unknowingly providing them with information they would use to exploit me further. I had always wondered how Madison could afford her lifestyle on her part-time boutique salary. Now I knew the answer. She could not afford it, and neither could my parents. So they had made me pay for it without my knowledge or consent. The betrayal cut so deep I could barely breathe. I was not dealing with people who had made a mistake or found themselves in a desperate situation. I was dealing with calculating criminals who happened to share my DNA. They had viewed me not as their daughter, but as a financial resource to be exploited. I sat in my apartment that evening, surrounded by printed credit reports and bank statements, trying to process the magnitude of what my family had done to me. This was not just theft. This was identity theft on a massive scale, committed by the people who were supposed to love and protect me more than anyone else in the world. But as I stared at the evidence spread across my kitchen table, I felt something new beginning to grow inside me alongside the devastation and betrayal. It was anger, pure and focused. They had stolen my money, my credit, and my trust. But they had not stolen my intelligence, my strength, or my ability to fight back. I was done being their victim. The next morning, I decided to confront Madison directly. If my parents had been systematically stealing from me to fund her lifestyle, I needed to know how much she knew about their scheme. Part of me still hoped that maybe Madison was just as much a victim as I was. That maybe she had no idea her BMW and apartment were being paid for with stolen credit. I drove to Madison's apartment complex, a luxury high-rise in downtown Denver that I now understood was financed entirely through fraud. The building had a doorman, valet parking, and a rooftop pool. Madison's one-bedroom apartment probably cost more per month than my entire annual car insurance premium. When Madison opened her door, she was not surprised to see me. In fact, she looked annoyed. I figured you would show up eventually. Mom said you were having some kind of breakdown about Christmas. Madison, we need to talk about the BMW. And your apartment. And pretty much everything else. She rolled her eyes and stepped aside to let me in. Her apartment was gorgeous, decorated with expensive furniture and designer accessories that I now realized had been purchased with my stolen credit. Everything from her Italian leather sofa to her stainless steel kitchen appliances had been bought with money that was not hers. Look, if you're upset about the car, I get it, but Mom and Dad said they wanted to do something really special for me this year. I've been having a hard time financially, and they thought this would help me get back on my feet. Madison, do you have any idea how they paid for this car? She shrugged. They said they had been saving up. What does it matter? They can afford it. No. They cannot afford it. They financed that car using my name, my social security number, and my credit history. They committed identity theft to buy you that BMW. For a moment, Madison looked genuinely surprised, but then her expression shifted into something that made my blood run cold. Oh, that. Yeah, I know about that. You know about it. Of course I know about it. It was actually my idea. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. What do you mean it was your idea? Madison sat down on her stolen sofa and looked at me like I was being ridiculous. Isabelle, you have perfect credit and no debt. I have terrible credit because of some mistakes I made in college. Mom and Dad do not have great credit either because of Dad's business problems a few years ago. When I needed help with my apartment and other expenses, I suggested they use your information instead. You never use your credit anyway, and you are always so responsible with money. I figured you could handle a little extra debt better than the rest of us could handle being denied for loans. Madison, that is felony fraud. They stole my identity to take out loans worth over $90,000. Do not be so dramatic. It is not like they are strangers who stole your purse. We are family. Family helps each other out. Helps each other out? Madison, I had no idea any of this was happening. They destroyed my credit and put me in massive debt without my knowledge or consent. That is not helping each other out. That is stealing. Madison's face hardened. You know what, Isabelle? I am really tired of your victim complex. You have always been Mom and Dad's favorite. You were the perfect student, the perfect daughter, the one who could do no wrong. They have spent your entire life praising you and making me feel like a failure. So excuse me if I do not feel sorry for you finally having to contribute something to this family. I stared at my sister in complete shock. Madison, what are you talking about? I was never their favorite. They have been giving you money and supporting you financially for years while I put myself through college and built my own career. That is not support, Isabelle. That is pity. They help me because they feel sorry for me. They love you because you are everything they wanted in a daughter. There is a huge difference. Even if that were true, which it is not, that does not give you the right to steal my identity and ruin my credit. Madison stood up, and her voice turned cold. Look, what is done is done. The loans are in your name now, and there is not much any of us can do about it. If you try to make trouble for Mom and Dad, I will just tell everyone that you gave us permission to use your credit and now you are trying to back out because you changed your mind. I have text messages and emails that can prove it. What text messages and emails? I never gave anyone permission for anything. Madison smiled, and it was the cruelest expression I had ever seen on my sister's face. Mom is really good with technology, Isabelle. She has been planning for this conversation. If you try to cause problems for us, we will make sure everyone knows that you are lying. I felt the world tilting underneath me. Not only had my family been systematically stealing from me, but they had been preparing to frame me if I ever discovered their crimes. They had created fake evidence to use against me. They had turned my own sister into a weapon to destroy my credibility and reputation. Madison, do you understand what you are saying? You are telling me that you and our parents have been planning to frame me for crimes that you committed. I am telling you that family loyalty works both ways. Mom and Dad have been good to you your whole life, and now it is time for you to be good to them. Accept responsibility for the debt, help me and them get back on our feet, and we can all move forward as a family. And if I refuse, then you will find out exactly how much evidence we have that you approved all of these financial decisions. And you will also find out how difficult life can become when your own family has to protect itself from false accusations. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and realized that the person I had grown up with no longer existed. This woman was a stranger who was willing to destroy me completely to avoid facing consequences for her own actions. She felt entitled to steal from me, and when confronted with evidence of her crimes, her response was to threaten me with more crimes. I stood up and walked toward the door. Where are you going? To talk to a lawyer. Isabelle, wait. You do not want to do this. You really do not want to make an enemy out of your own family. I turned around one last time. Madison, you stopped being my family the moment you decided to steal my identity, and now you have stopped being my sister. I walked out of that apartment knowing that I was not just fighting for my money or my credit score. I was fighting for my life, my freedom, and my future. My family was not trying to reconcile or make things right. They were trying to silence me, threaten me, and destroy me completely. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had underestimated exactly how strong I could become when I had nothing left to lose. I should have known my parents would not go quietly into defeat. 2 days after my confrontation with Madison, they showed up at my workplace during my busiest hour. And what they did there almost destroyed everything I had worked to build. I was in the middle of a client meeting when my assistant knocked on my conference room door with a panicked expression. Isabelle, I am so sorry to interrupt, but your parents are here with your sister, and they are asking to speak with you immediately. They seem very upset. My stomach dropped. My workplace was sacred territory. It was the one place where I felt competent, respected, and valued. My boss, Jennifer, had been mentoring me for 3 years and was considering me for a promotion to senior financial coordinator. My colleagues trusted my judgment and relied on my expertise. I had built a professional reputation based on honesty, reliability, and careful financial management. Please tell them I will call them later. I am in a meeting with an important client. But before my assistant could respond, I heard my mother's voice echoing through the office. We need to see our daughter right now. This is a family emergency. I excused myself from the client meeting and walked out to the reception area, where I found my parents and Madison creating a scene in front of my entire office. My mother was crying dramatically, dabbing at her eyes with tissues while my father stood with his arms crossed, looking angry and intimidating. Madison stood beside them, playing her role perfectly. Isabelle, thank goodness, my mother said loudly enough for everyone to hear. We have been so worried about you. You have not been answering our calls, and Madison told us about the terrible things you have been saying about our family. Every eye in the office was on us. My colleagues had stopped working and were staring at the spectacle my family was creating. I could feel my professional reputation crumbling in real time. Mom, I asked you not to contact me. We can discuss this privately later. Sweetheart, you are clearly having some kind of breakdown, my father said, his voice carrying across the entire office. You have been making wild accusations against your mother and me, claiming that we stole money from you. We are worried that you might be having some kind of psychological episode. I felt my face burning with embarrassment and rage. That is not true, and you know it. Honey, we love you so much. But you have been acting very erratically lately, my mother continued, loud enough for everyone to hear. Making up stories about credit card fraud and identity theft. Claiming that we bought Madison's car illegally. These delusions are getting worse, and we think you need professional help. Jennifer, my boss, approached us with concern written across her face. Isabelle, is everything all right? Do you need to take some time off to handle this family situation? Jennifer, I am fine. My family is just upset because I discovered they have been using my credit without permission, and now they are trying to make me look unstable to avoid consequences. My father stepped forward and addressed Jennifer directly. I am sorry my daughter has brought her personal problems into her workplace. Isabelle has been struggling with some mental health issues lately, and she has been making false accusations against her family. We have been trying to get her help, but she refuses to acknowledge that she has a problem. That is absolutely not true, I said, but I could see doubt creeping into Jennifer's expression. Madison jumped in with her contribution. Isabelle gave us permission to use her credit information to help with some family expenses. Now she is claiming she never agreed to it, but we have text messages and emails proving that she approved everything. We think she might be having memory problems or some kind of psychological break. We have been in contact with a psychiatrist, my mother added, and he said that false memory syndrome and paranoid delusions are common symptoms of the kind of breakdown Isabelle seems to be experiencing. I looked around the office and realized that my family was systematically destroying my credibility in front of the people who respected me most. My colleagues were listening to this conversation, watching my parents claim I was mentally unstable and making false accusations. Even Jennifer was starting to look at me differently. We just want our daughter to get the help she needs, my father concluded. But first, she needs to take responsibility for the financial commitments she made and stop making these harmful allegations against her family. Isabelle, Jennifer said gently, maybe you should take the rest of the day off to handle this situation with your family. Jennifer, everything they are saying is a lie. I can prove that they committed fraud. Sweetheart, my mother said, reaching out to touch my arm. Denial is part of the illness. The first step toward recovery is accepting that you have a problem. I realized in that moment that my family had not come to my workplace impulsively. This was a calculated attack designed to destroy my professional reputation and make me unemployable if I continued to fight them. They had researched psychological conditions, prepared a coordinated story, and chosen the most public, humiliating way possible to execute their character assassination. They were not just trying to steal my money. They were trying to steal my sanity, my career, and my freedom. If they could convince people that I was mentally unstable and making false accusations, no one would believe me when I reported their crimes. They could continue using my credit while positioning themselves as the loving family trying to help their delusional daughter. We just want Isabelle to come home with us today so we can get her the help she needs, my father said to Jennifer. She should not be making important financial decisions for clients when she is clearly not thinking rationally. I am not going anywhere with you, I said firmly. And I am not having any kind of mental breakdown. I am dealing with family members who committed identity theft, and now they are trying to gaslight me into believing I approved their crimes. See what we mean, Madison said to Jennifer. She just keeps repeating these paranoid accusations instead of accepting reality. I looked at Jennifer and saw that my family's performance was working. She was looking at me with pity and concern, like she was dealing with an employee who was having a psychological emergency. Isabelle, why don't you take the rest of the week off? You can use your sick days. Take some time to sort this out with your family, and we will discuss your workload when you come back. I realized that staying to argue would only make me look more unstable. Fine. I will take the time off. But everything I have told you about my family committing fraud is true, and I will prove it. As I gathered my things, I heard my mother say to Jennifer, "Thank you for being so understanding. We are hoping that with some professional help, Isabelle can overcome this episode and return to being the daughter we raised." I walked out of my office knowing that my family had just tried to destroy the last stable thing in my life. They were not content with stealing my money and my credit. They wanted to take my career, my reputation, and my sanity as well. But as I sat in my car outside my office building, I realized they had also made a crucial mistake. By coming to my workplace and making public threats, they had created witnesses to their harassment. By claiming to have fake text messages and emails, they had admitted to manufacturing evidence. By coordinating their stories so carefully, they had demonstrated a conspiracy to commit fraud and defamation. They thought they were silencing me, but they had actually given me exactly the evidence I needed to destroy them completely. That evening, I made the phone call that would change everything. I had spent hours researching fraud specialists and found Amanda Richardson, an attorney who specifically handled family identity theft cases. Her website described her as someone who had prosecuted dozens of cases involving relatives who stole from each other, and she offered free consultations for victims of family fraud. Richardson Law Office. This is Amanda speaking. Hi, my name is Isabelle Thompson, and I need help. My family has been using my identity to take out loans and credit cards without my permission, and now they are threatening to have me committed if I report them. I am very sorry to hear that, Isabelle. Unfortunately, family fraud is more common than most people realize. Can you come in tomorrow morning so we can discuss your situation in detail? The next morning, I arrived at Amanda's office with 3 boxes of printed evidence: credit reports, bank statements, loan documents, and detailed notes about every conversation I had had with my family. Amanda was a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who listened carefully as I explained the entire situation. When I finished my story, Amanda sat back in her chair with a grim expression. Isabelle, what your family has done to you constitutes multiple federal crimes: identity theft, wire fraud, mail fraud, and conspiracy. The fact that they used your social security number across multiple financial institutions makes this a federal case, not just a state matter. What does that mean? It means they could be facing federal prison time, not just fines or probation. The systematic nature of the fraud, combined with the amounts involved, puts them in a category that federal prosecutors take very seriously. I felt a mix of relief and terror, but they have been creating fake evidence to use against me. They claim they have text messages and emails proving I approved everything. Amanda smiled grimly. That actually makes your case stronger, not weaker. Creating false evidence to support fraud is another federal crime called obstruction of justice. Every fake text message or email they create is additional evidence of criminal intent. What about what they did at my workplace? They tried to convince my boss that I am mentally unstable. That is harassment, defamation, and potentially witness intimidation. The fact that they coordinated their stories shows conspiracy. Isabelle, your family has not just committed fraud against you. They have created a pattern of criminal behavior that demonstrates they are willing to destroy your life completely to avoid consequences. Amanda pulled out a legal pad and started making notes. Here is what we are going to do. First, we are going to file a police report documenting all the fraudulent accounts. Then we are going to contact the FBI Financial Crimes Unit, because the scope of this fraud requires federal intervention. We will also file for a restraining order to prevent them from contacting you or interfering with the investigation. Can they actually go to prison for this? Based on the evidence you have shown me, yes. The total amount of fraud exceeds $90,000, which puts them in a felony category that typically results in significant prison sentences. But there is something else you should know. Amanda pulled up a file on her computer. I have seen cases like this before, and there is often more money involved than the victim initially realizes. Have you ever received any inheritances or financial gifts from other family members? My maternal grandmother passed away 3 years ago, but my parents handled all the estate matters. They said she did not leave much money. Amanda made more notes. We need to investigate that as well. In my experience, when family members are systematically stealing from one relative, they are often hiding or stealing inherited money as well. You think they stole my inheritance? I think we need to request copies of your grandmother's will and estate documents. If there was money left to you that they intercepted and used without your knowledge, that would be additional theft. Amanda explained the next steps in detail. We would file all the necessary paperwork to begin criminal proceedings while simultaneously working to clear my credit and recover any stolen assets. The restraining order would prevent my family from contacting me, my workplace, or anyone else in my life. There is one more thing, Isabelle. The BMW dealership that your parents used to purchase the car illegally will be a key witness in this case. Dealerships are required to verify the identity of loan applicants, and they clearly failed to do that properly. They may be willing to cooperate with prosecution to avoid liability. What happens to Madison's BMW? Since the loan was obtained through fraud, the vehicle will likely be repossessed immediately. Madison will lose the car, and your parents will be responsible for any remaining debt. And Madison's apartment. If the lease was signed using your fraudulent information, she could face eviction. The landlord may also file charges for lease fraud. As I left Amanda's office that afternoon, I felt something I had not experienced since Christmas morning. Hope. For weeks, I had felt like a victim with no options, facing powerful enemies who held all the cards. But Amanda had shown me that the law was on my side, that federal prosecutors took these crimes seriously, and that my family's attempts to silence me had actually created more evidence for their prosecution. I was not just going to clear my credit and recover my money. I was going to make sure that my parents and Madison faced real consequences for what they had done. They had tried to destroy my life, but they had given me all the weapons I needed to destroy theirs instead. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. Strong, intelligent, and completely determined to win. Within 1 week of hiring Amanda, I watched my family's entire world collapse like a house of cards. The systematic approach they had used to destroy my life became the exact blueprint for their own destruction. Amanda moved with military precision. On Monday morning, she filed the restraining order, which was granted immediately due to the evidence of harassment at my workplace. By Tuesday, federal investigators had frozen all the fraudulent accounts and begun criminal proceedings. Wednesday brought the repossession team to take back the BMW while Madison was at work. But the biggest shock came on Thursday. Amanda called me with news that changed everything. Isabelle, we found your inheritance. Your grandmother left you $250,000 in a trust fund that was supposed to be distributed to you on your 25th birthday. I nearly dropped the phone. What? My parents told me she barely had any money when she died. Your parents were named as trustees with instructions to distribute the funds to you 3 years ago. Instead, they have been using your inheritance to fund their lifestyle and Madison's expenses. With interest and penalties, they now owe you over $300,000. The room started spinning. $300,000. Your grandmother's will specifically states that the money was intended to help you buy a house, start a business, or pursue graduate education. Your parents violated their fiduciary duty by stealing funds that legally belonged to you. Suddenly, everything made sense. Madison's expensive apartment, her designer clothes, my parents' new kitchen renovation, their luxury vacation to Europe last year. They had been living off my stolen inheritance while convincing me that grandmother had died nearly broke. There is more, Isabelle. The bank records show that your parents used your inheritance money as collateral for additional loans, including the BMW purchase. They essentially used your stolen money to steal more money from you. Amanda explained that the inheritance theft was a separate crime that carried additional penalties. Because my parents had been acting as legal trustees, their theft constituted a breach of fiduciary duty, which was a felony with mandatory restitution requirements. What does this mean for my family? It means they are facing multiple federal charges: identity theft, wire fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and breach of fiduciary duty. The total financial damages exceed $400,000 when you include interest, penalties, and legal fees. Isabelle, your parents are looking at significant federal prison time. Friday brought the culmination of everything Amanda had put in motion. Federal agents arrived at my parents' house with search warrants and asset seizure orders. They confiscated computers, financial documents, and anything that could be used as evidence of the systematic fraud. Madison called me, screaming and crying. The restraining order prevented her from contacting me directly, but she left voicemails that Amanda would later use as additional evidence of harassment. Isabelle, they took everything. The FBI seized Mom and Dad's bank accounts. They said our house might be seized too. How could you do this to your own family? We raised you, we loved you, and this is how you repay us? You are destroying our lives over money. But the most satisfying call came from my father. His voice was shaky, defeated, completely different from the threatening tone he had used in his previous messages. Isabelle, we need to talk. These federal charges are serious, and the lawyers are saying we could go to prison. Maybe we can work something out. We never meant to hurt you. We were just trying to help Madison get back on her feet. Can we please meet to discuss this like a family? Amanda advised me not to respond to any of their communications. Let them communicate through their attorneys. Right now, they are realizing that their scheme has backfired completely, and they are probably going to try to blame each other or claim they were somehow forced into committing these crimes. She was absolutely right. Within days, my parents' attorneys contacted Amanda with a plea bargain offer. My parents were willing to plead guilty to all charges in exchange for reduced sentences and full restitution. They would pay back every stolen dollar, with interest, and accept felony convictions that would prevent them from ever accessing credit in my name again. Madison's situation was more complicated. She had been actively involved in planning the fraud, but she had not actually committed identity theft herself. Her main crimes were conspiracy and accessory to fraud, which carried lighter sentences. However, she was also facing eviction from her apartment and the loss of all her luxury possessions that had been purchased with stolen money. The most poetic justice came when the FBI investigation revealed that my parents had been stealing from Madison as well. They had been intercepting part-time paycheck deposits and unemployment benefits that belonged to her, keeping her financially dependent so she would not question their fraudulent lifestyle funding. When Madison discovered that our parents had been stealing from both of us, she finally understood the magnitude of their manipulation. She agreed to cooperate with the federal investigation in exchange for immunity from prosecution. Isabelle, Amanda said during our final meeting that week, your family made a crucial mistake. They thought they were dealing with a victim who would be too scared or too loyal to fight back. Instead, they were dealing with someone with the intelligence, resources, and determination to hold them accountable for their crimes. 6 months later, I was sitting in a federal courthouse watching my parents plead guilty to multiple felony charges. They received 18 months in federal prison, 5 years of probation, and were ordered to pay complete restitution. Their house was seized and sold to help cover the damages they owed me. Madison moved across the country to stay with relatives, finally forced to build a life based on her own work rather than stolen money. She sent me a letter apologizing for her role in the fraud and acknowledging that our parents had manipulated both of us in different ways. But the most important change was not financial or legal. It was personal. I had discovered that I was not the weak, passive victim my family had tried to make me become. When they attacked my life, my career, and my sanity, I had found the strength to fight back with intelligence, determination, and the full force of the law. I was no longer their victim. I was their worst nightmare. Someone who refused to be silenced and who had the power to hold them accountable for their choices. 6 months after that devastating Christmas morning, I am sitting in the living room of my new house, a beautiful 3-bedroom home in a quiet neighborhood that I bought with my recovered inheritance money. The mortgage is in my name only, paid for with money that was rightfully mine all along. My credit score has been completely restored and is actually higher than it was before the fraud, thanks to the systematic removal of all fraudulent accounts and the addition of positive payment history from my legitimate financial activities. I have a growing emergency fund, a robust retirement account, and for the first time in my life, genuine financial security that no one can take away from me. The most significant change is not financial, though. It is personal and professional. Jennifer, my boss, witnessed my strength and determination throughout the legal proceedings, and instead of questioning my stability, she promoted me to senior financial coordinator with a significant salary increase. She said she had never seen anyone handle a crisis with such grace and intelligence, and she wanted someone with my resilience in a leadership position. Isabelle, the way you fought for yourself showed me exactly the kind of character we need in management, she told me during my promotion meeting. You did not just survive what your family did to you. You turned it into an opportunity to demonstrate your strength. My parents served their 18 months in federal prison and are now living in a small rental apartment, working minimum wage jobs to pay off the remainder of their restitution debt. They are prohibited from accessing any form of credit without court supervision, and they must report their financial activities to a federal probation officer monthly. They have reached out through attorneys requesting to reconcile, but I have made it clear that I have no interest in rebuilding a relationship with people who systematically betrayed and tried to destroy me. Madison completed her community service and probation requirements and has been working as a waitress in Portland, Oregon. slowly building a life based on her own efforts rather than stolen money. She sent me a letter 6 months ago acknowledging the damage she had helped cause and taking responsibility for her choices. While I appreciate her honesty, I am not ready to forgive someone who actively participated in destroying my financial future and then threatened to frame me when confronted with evidence of her crimes. The most meaningful change has been discovering what real family looks like. I have built deep friendships with colleagues who supported me during the legal proceedings. Amanda, my attorney, has become a mentor who taught me that strength is not about avoiding conflict but about standing up for yourself when others try to harm you. I have started dating someone who loves my independence and admires my resilience, someone who sees my refusal to be victimized as an attractive quality rather than a threat. That cheap plastic piggy bank sits on my mantle now, not as a reminder of humiliation but as a symbol of transformation. It represents the moment I stopped accepting less than I deserved and started fighting for the life I wanted to build. The $2 bills are still inside, but I have added something new. A small note that reads, "Never again." Not never again will I be betrayed, because I cannot control other people's choices, but never again will I allow someone else's betrayal to define my worth or limit my potential. I have learned that family is not determined by DNA or shared history. Family is determined by love, respect, loyalty, and integrity. The people who share my blood proved that they valued money more than they valued me. The people I have chosen to build relationships with have proven that they value my character, my strength, and my happiness. The most important lesson from this entire experience is that you can only control your own choices and responses. I could not control my family's decision to steal from me, lie to me, or try to destroy my reputation. But I could control my decision to fight back, to seek justice, and to build a better life for myself. Some people are going to try to take advantage of your kindness, your loyalty, or your trust. When that happens, you have two choices: accept it and remain a victim, or fight back and reclaim your power. I chose to fight, and that choice gave me not just my money back, but myself, respect, my strength, and my freedom. Today, I am financially secure, professionally successful, emotionally healthy, and surrounded by people who genuinely care about me. I own my home, I control my finances, and I make my own decisions about who deserves space in my life. That Christmas morning, my family thought they were showing me my place in their hierarchy. Instead, they showed me exactly how much strength I had inside me and taught me that I deserved so much more than they were ever willing to give. Have you ever had to cut toxic family members out of your life to protect your own well-being? Have you found the courage to fight back when people who were supposed to love you tried to take advantage of you instead? I would love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below, because sometimes the most difficult but necessary choice is putting yourself first when others refuse to respect your worth. If this story resonated with you, please like this video to help it reach other people who might be dealing with similar family betrayal and need to know they are not alone. Subscribe for more stories about finding strength in difficult situations and standing up for yourself when others try to tear you down. And please share this with anyone who needs to be reminded that they deserve better than being someone else's victim. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that no matter how dark things might seem right now, you have more power than you realize to change your situation and build the life you deserve. Take care of yourselves, and remember, you are worth fighting for.